Hi there, and thank you for joining me. So, these stories I'm about to share with you are ones that they truly disturbed me to my core when I first read them. And they have stuck with me for over 10 years. There's just something about each of them that was the right amount of creepy, that it truly embedded itself in my mind. It's been many, many moons since then. So I like to see if they still hold up, because the creepy visuals they gave me, on occasion still to this day, will pop in my mind, but I'm ready to get creeped out again. So with that being said, sit back, relax, get comfortable, and allow me to share with you 3 stories that have deeply disturbed me for many years. Let's begin. Under the bed. I've been lying down for hours now. It's 5:35 a.m. and there's not much I can do. You know what the worst part about my situation is? I'm in the same room with my parents. They keep looking at me, and I can't help but look back and try not to cry or scream. Their eyes are focused on me, and their mouths are wide open. There's a strong scent of blood, and I feel paralyzed with fear. Here's the thing. The second I make any hint that I'm not asleep anymore, I'm completely screwed. I will die, and there's nobody around to save me. I've been trying to think of a way out, but the only idea I have is to rush out of the room, run outside the front door, screaming for help, hoping my neighbors will hear me. It's risky, but if I stay here, I'll surely die. He's waiting for me to wake up and see his masterpiece. You're probably wondering what's going on. I get ahead of myself sometimes. About 3 hours ago, I heard a scream coming from the other side of the house. I got up and went to check on the noise before realizing I had to use the restroom. Instead of doing the smart thing investigating, I used the bathroom first. I could have gotten myself killed right then and there for my stupid actions. But I actually did my business and took a peek outside the bathroom. There was blood on the carpet. I got very worried and ran back to my room, hiding under my sheets like the baby I was. I tried to convince myself to go back to sleep, that this was just some really vivid dream or something. But then I heard the bathroom door open, and like the terrified child I was, I peeked from under my blankets to see what was going on. I could see something, dragging my dead parents into the room. It was not human, I can tell you that. It was hairless, with no eyes and no clothing. It walked like a caveman, with his back slouched as it dragged my parents. But the thing was much smarter than any caveman. It was aware of what it was doing. It propped my dad up on the edge of my bed and made him face me. It then sat my mother down in a chair and positioned her towards me as well. It started rubbing his hands on the wall, staining them with blood from my parents, and then drew a circle with the devil's pentagram on it. This thing had made what it probably called a masterpiece. To finish it off, it scribbled a message onto the wall that I could not read in the darkness. It then positioned itself under my bed, waiting to strike. The scariest thing now, my eyes have adjusted to the darkness since then, and I can read the message on the wall. I don't want to look at it because it's terrifying to think about, but I feel I need to see before I'm killed. I peek at the creature's masterpiece. I know You're awake. Symmetry. I love symmetry. I'm not sure exactly why, but I've loved it since I was a kid. Most children are messy and forgetful of their things. Not me. I knew everything had a place in my room. Everything was right where it belonged. My parents didn't have it. My grandparents didn't have it either. Not a single person in my family had it. I've started referring to it as it because I truly believe it's a thing inside me. A stowaway that shouldn't be there but lives inside me. It's a need, a desire, a longing to be perfect. Perfect on both sides. As an adult, I'm at the point where I can't live life normally. I can't keep a job. Women don't stay with me because they can't handle it. Honestly, I don't care when they leave. They're messy and they make things difficult. They roll over to my side of the bed instead of staying on their own. They leave dishes on one side of the sink, but not the other. I can't work anymore, so when they leave for the day, I have to stay home and fix everything. It's a relief when they leave for good. That feeling never lasts, though. Eventually, it comes back and finds something that needs fixing. You may be asking, why would I seek out relationships to begin with? I can't stand them. Well, it's hard for me to sleep in the middle of the bed all night without moving. Other than the relationship problem, my life is pretty much in order. I say pretty much because there is one last issue that must be dealt with. You see, I have what's called heterochromia iridium, or two different colored irises. My right eye is cornflower blue. My left, pale green. Both my parents have cornflower blue eyes. My siblings and cousins as well. My green eye is the broken one. It makes me unbalanced. Every time I look in the mirror, it stares right back at me. It's all I think about now. Everything is in the right place except my green little mistake. It didn't hurt at first. When I dug the spoon under my eye, it didn't even hurt when it popped out and was hanging by my cheek. Was it shock that kept the pain away, or was it? I snipped the optic nerve and blotted the warm fluids that were streaming down my face. My vision being cut in half was a strange sensation. What was left of the dangling flesh, I placed back in the now empty hole. I bandaged the wound, rinsed the spoon, and went to sleep. I woke up, happy. I slept better than I had in years. It was finally done. I was fixed. I got out of bed and stumbled to the bathroom. My body ached and my head was on fire. I flipped the switch in the bathroom and the light was blinding. I slowly removed the bandage that was soaked with blood and was sticking to my face like tape. When I looked in the mirror, my stomach turned. Only then I had realized what I had done to myself, and I couldn't believe it. There was a hole in the left side of my face, but not the right. I was unbalanced. Again, it was much harder digging out the second eye. My hands were shaking when I dug the spoon in. I missed several times, puncturing my pupil 3 times before I got it in the right place. Once the eye popped out, I reached for my scissors to finish the job. The blood from the previous night had dried on the blades. So, the scissors, they didn't cut very well. You know, when you were a kid in elementary school, and your teacher made you cut construction paper for art projects, did you ever try to cut too many pieces at once and the scissors couldn't take it? The blades would kind of fold over each other, and the paper would get pinned between them. That's what happened with my eye. The optic nerve was pinned between the 2 blades. It was stuck, and as I tried desperately and frantically to make it unstuck, I slipped on the blood and started falling to the floor. Reflexes kicked in, and I let go of my eye to try to break the fall with my hand. The weight of the stuck scissors on my hanging eye was unbearable. I knew I couldn't stand it long enough to make it to the kitchen to get a knife, so I pulled it straight out of my head. I felt the flesh tear from inside my skull. I felt it rip and spew liquids everywhere. I knew I was crying, but there was no way of telling the tears from the blood from the ocular fluid. When I heard the wet slap of bloody flesh against the tile floor, I knew I was done. I knew it was done. I could live my life now without having to see people's awful, messy, uneven lives. The relief washed over me, and I knew it would last this time. I had never felt this way before, never had this much hope. As I laid in my bathroom on that cold, wet, sticky tile, I smiled for the first time in years. The Smiling Man. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who decidedly was not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once did I ever have a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in this city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police patrol park quite a ways away from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street and went to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the end of the street, on my side, was a silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, heading straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed into a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved. Until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him. And then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoe steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I like to say at this point I ran away or I pulled out my pepper spray or cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length from me, still smiling his smile and looking at the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the hell do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go, until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I just kept glancing over my shoulder. I was expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see. So, those were 3 stories from the internet that I read over 10 years ago. I'm gonna say they held up decently well. I still think they're creepy and pretty disturbing, but what did you guys think? I would love to hear what you thought about these stories below, and by some chance you have some suggestions for me, if there's any scary stories I should check out, or if you have any other game suggestions. I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care of yourself. I hope to see you in the next one.